Your circle will change as you accomplish your goals and level up. Everybody can't go.
All right, you guys, happy Wednesday and welcome to another Everybody Can Go Convo. As you can see with the wonderful backdrop in the back, I am bringing to you guys a couple who specializes in counseling married couples. Where did I find them? You know that I don't bring y'all anybody that I haven't already tried, tested, and approved myself. So I am bringing to you guys Ernie and Ronna Cason this evening. My bad. It's nighttime, y'all. It ain't even morning when I press play. I don't know why I said good morning. That's, but it's morning somewhere. But I'm bringing to you guys a couple that has helped to pour into my life, helped to pour into my marriage, and help to set the precedence and set the stage for what marriage looks like, resolving conflict, and to set forth a vision for my marriage that I wanted to have, something that I'd never seen before, something I never experienced from those surrounding me. So what did I do? Instead of looking at y'all on social media and some of the foolishness that I see y'all claim y'all up to, I went and found real couples who are into having happy, healthy, and godly marriages. So you may ask yourself, now, why would I want to be married into crazy? Like, what do that mean? So I'm going to let them go ahead and let you guys know what Married into Crazy actually is and how the brand came about. So welcome, you guys, and thank you for joining me.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for having us. This is we're excited. This is amazing.
So I'm Snooks. Start out.
Yeah. So
Okay,
our real
I'm
names are
Ronna.
Ernie and Ronna Cason, but for the last 28 years, we've been married 27. But for the last 28 years, our families, everyone has known us as Snooks and Lovey, and that's what the podcast is. Married into Crazy with Snooks and Lovey. But what does Married into Crazy mean? You want to start?
So crazy is an acronym, and it stands for compassionate, real, accountable, zealous, and yielding. So we always say everyone could be more compassionate in their marriage, could be more real, have more accountability, be more zealous, and also be more yielding.
And sometimes
it's just crazy.
It's just crazy.
I love that. I love that. So with Married into Crazy as a brand, what types of things do you have guys have going on right now? And what things do you have coming up in the near future?
Well, it's so funny that you even asked that question. I love the question. But I came to a realization about 2 weeks ago. We've been Married into Crazy, that particular moniker, since 2018. And there's a longer story behind it. It's been in our family for a while. It's a phrase I coined with a bunch of the fellas that married into her family. So starting off, it was just crazy without an acronym.
That just meant they needed to be more compassionate and real and accountable, zealous, and yielding. So,
but when you talk about the brand, the realization I came to is that Married into Crazy isn't the brand. The blessing is the brand. And the blessing being the covenant of marriage. That is the true brand. It's the first institution, right? That was God's brand that he put out there for man and woman initially. The moment Eve came on the scene, that was his brand. Married into Crazy just happens to be a lens through which some individuals have the opportunity to view God's brand. And so the things that we offer as a lens through which you can see the covenant of marriage, it comes in a variety of ways. You have the podcast. There's webinars, seminars that we do. We do keynote speaking, but we also have, as you can tell, clothing gear. And there's an online course that you can take. It's 18 videos. It's called Raise the Bar. So there's different things that we do along with our coaching, because we do couple to couple and some individual coaching as well, both married individuals and premarital.
That is awesome. That is really awesome. We will make sure that for you guys, you already know, I'm going to drop all those handles in the show notes for you, the website, and where you can get in contact with them. So let's dig into a couple of questions with you guys. So what's the long story that you gave us just a little schmutz there? So what's the story behind how this movement started?
So Lovey, he always thinks he's funny, right? Anyway, we were at a wedding. My aunt and my uncle, they renewed their like 45th wedding anniversary. And along there's the hall, and then on the other side there was like the bar. And so the guys were in the bar, and I guess he looked around and he was just like, "Oh, like everyone in there except for my cousin had married into our family." And
So I looked at all the fellas, and I thought it was really odd. So I made sure everybody had a drink in hand, and I told everybody to raise their glasses for a toast for all the men that married into crazy. And we immediately bonded at that moment.
wow, really?
No, and that's how it started. But then over the years, we had been through some stuff. So Snooks and I, when we first got engaged, she had a crazy ex-boyfriend that popped up every now and then, right? And make a long story short, he forced his way into her home. Somebody else opened the door, forced his way in, attacked Snooks. And so he and I got into a fight. And as we were fighting, I got pulled off of him. And we didn't know he had a serrated steak knife. He lashed out, ended up stabbing me through my heart. And so the knife went all the way through. So I ended up having 2 open heart surgeries. First one, of course, to save my life. And then when I was in ICU, they discovered that it went all the way through. So I had to heal well enough to go back and have a second surgery. So I had to get my chest cracked open twice. That was the beginning. That was before we even said I do. And then there were a variety of things that transpired after that. And we got married a year later. And 4 years into our marriage,
I asked for anniversary. I asked for a divorce on our 4-year anniversary. And so obviously we didn't get divorced, but it took
came really close.
It did come close. But we went through we did counseling, we did coaching, and one thing that we recognized actually was that, I mean, we had people in our families that have been married, a long time. But not necessarily, I want to say they were like happily married. It wasn't like they were couples that we wanted to emulate our marriage off of. So there was a couple that actually was in Lovey's family, and it was just being around them. You could feel the love, you could see it, the way that they just interacted together. And when they found out that it was his aunt and uncle, when they found out that we were on the outs, they were like, "Oh, it's not happening," And we then realized that we need to be around like-minded people. It's very important. I don't think that people that are married really realize how important it is to have like-minded couples that they could look at or be around and hang out with. You don't want to be with someone who they don't like their spouse. Every time you turn around, "Oh God, here he go. He get on my nerves," or "She's always blah, blah, blah," whatever. And, you want to be around people that you see that like to hang out together, that get along and stuff. So, it just kind of became an organic kind of thing, to where we had to really find our way back to each other.
Right. And what we realized in that process was that the thing we were looking for, we couldn't really find. Outside of my aunt and uncle, that was great. And they were our coaches. And as they coached us through this process, I mean, we looked for books. We did go through marriage counseling.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't necessarily work from an us together type thing. But we couldn't find the resources we needed. And so as we worked our way through it and got on the other side of that, we started reaching out, or I should say, people started reaching out to us saying, "Hey, we know you guys have been through some stuff." So unofficially in living rooms, on the side, sidebars at church, people wanted to meet with us.
Right.
And we'd end up counseling people. So that happened for years. And then eventually went to a conference ET. It was the Take Control conference in San Francisco in 2018. And CJ challenged everyone in the room to do the thing that they're passionate about, the thing that they were called to do that comes so easy to them that for others, it would be a massive lift, but for you, it gives you energy. And on the way back, driving home, was like an hour and a half drive back from San Francisco. We're like, you know what? Well, I should say
No,
we.
I won't say we. Don't say we.
I was like, you know what? We should do a podcast.
It's like,
just talking to other couples.
He didn't say we should do a podcast. He was like, we're going to start a podcast. I was like, what? Because I mean, I listened to podcasts only when I was held hostage in the car. You know, I wasn't a big podcast listener. Secrets to Success probably was the first podcast that I willingly listened to. And he was like, yeah, we're going to start a podcast and we're going to, you know, and I was like, who's going to listen to us? What are we going to talk about? How are we going to do this? You know, I'm more practical. Like, how is this actually going to work? And he's like, don't worry about that. We're going to start it. And I was like, wow, we're going to be talking to ourselves. That's what's going to happen. So,
and a big part of our coaching happens to utilize the flight assessment, which is layered with the DISC assessment. And so, as you can tell, I'm very high D, high I. For those of you that don't know what that is, we'll reach out to us. We'll tell you all about it. And she's very much more pragmatic, and you know, the S and the C. She's supportive, but very analytical at times. And so I was like, we'll figure it out as we go. But the premise was, we're going to be the couple, the resource that we needed when we were going through adversity, and we couldn't find it. Mm-hmm. And we thought, you know, if one person listens and we're able to help one marriage via the podcast, then you know what? God be praised. That's something that's a good thing. We're doing his work. And long before we knew it, then it was like, oh, there's people listening to us. Then it was like, oh, the stats are saying we're in, you know, the nation. Then it was these countries, and it got up to like 35, 40 countries. People were like chipping in. And every time I was like, you know what? I'm overwhelmed. Let's just quit. Somebody would nudge, like over on our wall. There's a thing hanging that's basically an email from a woman in South Africa. Literally the day I was like, that's it. I've had it. I am not going to do this anymore. It's just taking up too much time. She wrote us to say how our podcast positively affected or impacted her marriage. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, God's like, let me know that, you know, this is not your podcast. It's my podcast.
Right. Okay.
And so from there, we kept it going. And then we developed the coaching. We ended up getting certified extreme execution. Both of us are certified extreme execution coaches through Eric Thomas. And then we got some more certifications through the Gottman Institute. We completed level 1, level 2 with their couples therapy method. Mm-hmm. And we utilize the clinical things that we've learned combined with our experiential teaching. We also introduce people to other couples and subject matter experts, different individuals that can really help people's marriages. Mm-hmm. And that's our passion. I mean, we love it. We could be tired, but then when we get on a podcast or we get into a coaching session and we're helping someone, it's amazing where the energy comes from. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing to hear. So with you talking about the way that you guys just have this zeal and this passion for coaching others, there would be a place in there somewhere where, and you talked about it and alluded to this a bit earlier, that you need to get in spaces with like-minded individuals. Would there be a time that you could talk about from off the top of you guys' heads where you kind of have like your everybody can't go moment where it's like, you know, it's been great up until this point, but for the sake of my marriage, the season is over, the reason is done, and I need to move on from this? And how did you guys kind of like communicate about that situation?
I know what comes to my mind.
What?
In year 4, when Snooks asked for a divorce, there was a reckoning. There wasn't infidelity, any of the major big things. It was that I wasn't standing up being the man that she deserved. I was saying yes to way too many people in my family, saying yes to her, saying yes to my mom, saying yes to my grandparents, saying yes, but never really being the person she needed 100%. And so that everybody can go moment came about 4.5 years into our marriage, where I realized that everybody can't be a part of my marriage. It's got to be her and I. And when I stood that and kind of drew that, and it wasn't even drawing a line in sand, I drew that line in concrete, and everybody couldn't go. And not everybody was very happy with my decision, but this is our universe. You know, they talk about having a heliocentric universe where the sun's in the center of the solar system. In that moment, at our 4.5 year mark, we became the center of our solar system. And it was our gravity, our pull, that was going to keep all the other bodies in orbit around us. You know, those other bodies, not planets, but relatives, friends. Some friends fell by the wayside. Long-term close friends fell by the wayside because they couldn't accept us. You know, I love that when people are down for you, you know, somebody's got your back, what have you, but can you be down for my marriage? Mm-hmm. Can you check me if, you know, I'm doing the wrong thing, mm-hmm. or if my mind's going, if I'm saying the wrong thing, or if my attitude is just really foul and it's negatively affected. Will you check me on that because you're down for my marriage? Or will you be like that yes person? Yeah, I got your back, man. Forget her. No, those people had to go. Mm-hmm. So that was for me, the everybody can't go moment.
So I want to say with mine was more gradual because there wasn't like a hard stop for like when that happened. It would just be certain things that some people would say, certain ways that they would act, you know. I was like, that makes me feel kind of funny because I don't feel like that about my man, or I don't feel like that because I do these things for him. And it just kind of gave me pause. And, you know, I try to extend grace to a lot of people. So I'm like, maybe just having a bad day kind of thing. And when that type of behavior or those type of attitudes were displayed again, I was just like, yeah, that's too negative for me. I can't, you know, how we do stuff in our household is I don't have a problem serving Lovey. You know, if you want to plate, I'll make you a plate or whatever, you know.
Hold on.
Kind of things.
This is being recorded, right?
I wish you would say something.
This is being recorded.
I wish you would. I wish you would.
Exhibit A.
Okay. Anyway, so you know, it was just those type of attitudes, like that's just there are certain people, like Lovey said, you know, certain friends that they're not, you know, we always have a saying that everyone doesn't belong in your front row anyway. So some of those people who may have been in my second and third row, they may now be in the back of the theater, or they're just not even in there, you know. So I had to start learning how to separate myself from that type of behavior, type of negativity, because it would affect me. And I'm not trying to bring that kind of stuff into my home. So, like there's no hard, I can't really say when it like that. It was just more of a, okay, I'm checking you. And I'm, no, thank you. You know, so that's kind of how it happened.
Okay.
That's awesome. So I hope you guys caught that. 2 things that we've talked about in previous episodes and we're revisiting. Make sure that you take those notes down and write down those gems. Making sure that, you know, even if there's not that hard stop, that sometimes there are just people that are around you, that it's the things that they say, some of the things that they're expressing to you, they're dumping their dump truck on you. And that starts to kind of, you know, dig into your subconscious, and that can cause you to take home unknowingly sometimes those negative feelings back into your own home. This isn't just in marriage. This can also be with other friendships, other relationships, sometimes even with your children or with your parents. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then the other thing that I'll point out to you guys, if you missed it there, notice that both Snooks and Lovey had 2 different versions of what those boundaries looked like when they needed to set those boundaries there. We had the hard line in the concrete, and then we also had that gradual taper off from those reasons and seasons from people that may have, you know, previously been thought of as lifetime folks. So make sure you take those 2 bullet points down. So, coming back to you guys, as far as making those decisions and breaking away from one another, breaking away from other people and coming closer in toward one another, that brings me to my next question. I noticed that on your social media at one point, you guys talked about encouraging couples to create a vision for their own marriage. What does that mean and what could that look like?
So I feel like, social media, not just social media, TV, whatever. We're always trying to, there was that saying, keeping up with the Joneses. So my
Mhm.
maiden name is Jones. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses, okay? Have your own idea of what your relationship should look like. It's not going to look like Denzel and Paulette. It's not going to look like Patrick and whatever his wife's name is, or whomever, we see these things and we think, oh, I want to be like that, or I want to be like them. I mean, that's good if there's qualities in there that you like. Okay, I could see us doing that. I could see, incorporating it into making it your own. It's almost like plagiarism. you know you can't take what someone else is saying and just make it yours verbatim. You have to take what they're saying, dissect it, and put it into your own words. That's kind of the same thing when you think about it with doing a vision for your marriage. I see good points in a lot of couples, and I'm like, I like that idea. We can incorporate that. But I'm not trying to emulate them like pound for pound. We're going to be just like them. You guys have to set your own, what your own vision is, and not just my vision, but Lovey has to have a say so in it too. It's a collaboration. So don't just be like, oh well, this is how I want it.
See, and it's incorporated within our logo as well. So when you look at the rings, you can see it behind us, and it's on our shirts. It's in everything.
You can see it
It's on my
behind
hat.
us.
So when you're creating a vision, we create visions for our health. We sit down and say, I want to look a certain way. I want to weigh a certain amount, or I in our careers, I want to achieve a certain rank, or get a position or a title or what have you, or achieve a certain monetary level. And our businesses, I want to have this many customers and so forth. We set all these goals and create all these visions, but not very many people we found sit down and say, okay, husband, wife, let's sit down and figure out, what do we envision as a great marriage? Not the marriage that my parents had, or that my grandparents had, or that my aunt had. How many people running around out there that for years were like, we want to be like Will and Jada? Yeah, that, and then now they're like, ooh, okay, I didn't mean Will and Jada. I meant, because they were putting these people up on a pedestal, right? And they didn't have a vision. Like you said, I love that plagiarism part that you said.
Thank you.
Because
make sure you don't be saying
you can't you can't take something and then try and apply it out of context. To try and be what somebody else is and what you see being emulated everywhere else, and then put it in your world, is completely out of context, because we all have our own backgrounds. We all have our own baggage. We have all of our own things that we've brought into this relationship. But if you sit down together, and like looking at our logo is kind of like a Venn diagram, where you have one ring. That circular ring is, the husband. The other ring is the wife. And you try and find that overlap. When you bring them together, that spot in the middle that overlaps, that's the shared vision that you should have for your future, whether that's involving your finances, parenting, lifestyle, all the different things that come into play when you say I do. And there's a purpose for that, because the Bible says a man without vision shall perish. Well, a marriage without vision shall also perish.
That's right.
So that's why we're really big into having a vision for your marriage and talking about it. You're not always going to agree. That's, if you look at our rings, there's still a lot of space that's not overlapped. And that's where individuality kicks in. It's okay to have individual goals and dreams and visions, but let's just make sure it doesn't impede the visions that you have that are overlapping, that you've agreed to. The outside things cannot, I guess, negatively impact those things where the overlap is, the vision that you share.
That's right.
So with that being said, what would be what would be the top 3 tips that you would give for a couple who we have the man who has his vision, a woman who has her vision, and they're working on merging those two things together, and neither person wants to budge because I've got mine and I already decided what my vision is. And the other person says, I've got my vision, I've written it down, and I already know what mine says. What would be the top 3 suggestions that you would give to two people who are very sure of themselves, they're sure of the vision that they have for their life, and how they can find that nice space of overlap there and still keep some of that individuality while respecting each other?
One thing, you want to go?
Go ahead.
One thing that we're really big on is the check-in. We advise every couple, I don't care how long you've been together, if it's been a week or 25, 30 years, there's importance in checking in with each other. And so we say, I think tip number 1 would be to check in on a weekly basis. Just have an opportunity to sit down and just say, hey, it might be a half hour, 45 minutes, hour, whatever, and just check in and talk about how things are going. Are you feeling fulfilled this week? Well, yes, no, well, why not? What's going on? And you start to gain and understand each other that much better and understand what makes each other tick, right? Because it's a lifelong process of learning, because who I was 27 years ago, 28 years ago is not who I am now. So the things that I told her that I feel 2 decades ago, wow, that sounds bad.
Wow, that sounds make us
what I said
old.
then doesn't apply now. Some things might still be there.
I'm like, yes, they do.
But the great majority of it has changed. And by checking in, it lets you know, it brings you closer together. So there's not that huge disparity between like, I've got it, I know what I want to do. And the other person like, I'm lost, I have no idea. You at least know, and it's not going to be a big surprise if the person's still trying to discover where they want to go.
Okay. So I'm sorry. Ask that question one more time.
So let me make it a little bit shorter this time. What would be your top 3 suggestions for a couple who is coming together, who both of them separately, they have a strong vision and they're trying to find that overlap while remaining respectful of each other and keeping individuality?
So, number 1, I feel like give grace to each other. Give grace to yourselves, because like you said, you are still individuals. But kind of piggybacking on like the check-in part of it, when we're doing anything, let's write our ideas down, let's brainstorm, and whatever overlaps as far as like for the joint part, then we know that those are the things that are most important to both of us. You have to compromise also. That's the other one. Compromise, because it's not, it can't just go one person's way and it can't just go the other person's way, because, as a couple, you're a team, right? And in a team, if one person's needs are being met, but the other person's teams or the other people's, their needs are not being met, then that's an ineffective team, basically. So, do the oh my God, diagram. Yeah, do that. I was thinking brainstorm,
No, the brainstorm. And let me just piggyback on that, because that's important. Last year we did we spoke at a marriage conference up in Lake Tahoe, and one of the things we had all the couples do, and there were couples there that had been married from a week to 65 years, and it was awesome, and a lot of knowledge in that room. And one thing we did was we had everybody write down their 10 goals, whatever they may be. You said as much as 10, no more, different things that are extremely important to them, more like topics, like finance, intimacy, these things, what they are, and then rank them and then compare them. And then when they compare those things, whatever and they had to negotiate a little bit, because somebody might have said intimacy was like number 4, but then for the other person, intimacy was number 2. So get into those top 3 or 4 spaces and come to a conclusion, a consensus about what those top 4 things are. You might have to move some things around, but you have to agree on those. And then whatever those 4 was, you had 10, but then you together decided, no, these are our top 4. Then that's the area that they focused on when it came to their vision. Not that the other things couldn't be, dealt with in some way, fashion, or form, But as a couple, those top 4 things, this is where the majority of our energy is going to go, because we've agreed that this is where we're going to go. So what does our vision look like for intimacy? What does it look like for finances? What does it look like for whatever you put in those top 4?
Mm-hmm. And then I feel like too, once you've mastered those top 4, then you move down to the next 4. But, not forgetting that you did master those top 4, because they're, keep it real, we're humans, and we'll work on something, and once we feel like, oh, I got that down now, then we'll forget about it, and then we'll go and do something else. Don't lose sight of what it was that you've already accomplished. So that would be mine.
Yeah. I don't know if that was 3.
I was about to say, did that make sense?
We just threw a bunch of stuff at you.
It did. You guys got my wheels turning here, and now I'm thinking like, ooh, in the check-ins, like, do we have more to talk about? Do we need to break out the pens and paper and make sure that we're brainstorming, overlapping, and revisiting? That was the revisiting it and coming together to make sure that things are not left undone. And that overlap is the part about that stuck out to me the most. For me personally, I don't know about you guys. Remember, we aren't plagiarizing. We citing our marriage sources, y'all. Hashtag cite your marriage sources. So the part that stuck out for me was making sure to consistently make sure that overlap is between the two of us. Because I do a lot of writing, a lot of, working on making sure that, okay, well, the next set of goals that I have, is this in alignment with my vision? These are the things that we've decided together. These are the things that I'm working on my own. I know what he's working on his own, but I didn't really think about, as I move some of my little blocks around, that, oh, I made an adjustment to my vision. I need to bring my notebook back, like, hey, we need to check in about this so that we can compare notes. What adjustments have you made as you were, working on your pieces of the vision, and making sure that that overlap we created, that we maintain that overlap and continue to move forward with, if we're coming apart a little bit and it's like, okay, we're going to divide and conquer on something. Let's make that decision together that we're going to divide. I'll be back in 5 minutes because I'm going to miss them. And then we're going to come back together so that we can make sure that we're building toward ultimately that vision that we have for what our marriage looks like. And so I really, I'm going to have to rewind this back for myself. And we're going to have to take some additional notes, like, hold on here. Okay. So, as far as building that vision and creating things together, one of the quotes that stuck out for me recently from you guys' content was, a successful relationship is a journey. Enjoy the scenery together. And I thought that was so well put and so well-rounded and fully encompassing. And I just wanted to pick you guys' brains a little bit on what made that quote come about, and what actually did that mean?
So the part about it being a journey, we've all taken trips. Right? The great majority of us, I won't make the assumption, but the great majority of us have gone on a trip. Whether it's a long trip in a car, you get in the car, you have a destination. I want to go from point A to point B. And you're so focused on the destination, the end point, that we forget to take a look at all the scenery that we pass by. If it's a 2-hour drive, there's a lot of things that you miss if you're just strictly focused on, the road. You might miss the fact that there was a beautiful meadow off to your left or to the right, or there was some scenery, a lake. You might even decide, oh, let's stop and just take a picture there, or let's stop and go take a look at it. There's a variety of things that happen, and our marriage is no different, to where we think it's a destination. Marriage is not a destination. You don't get to the day that you get married, say I do, and you've arrived. It's a journey. And that journey can become extremely difficult at times. There's adversities. There's a variety of things that take place. There's also a lot of triumphs that go along with it. But it's kind of a peak to peak theory, right? So you climb a mountain, you get there and you're thinking, oh, this is a great view. And then from that view, you notice that, oh, there's some more mountains over there that are higher, but you have to go back down into the valley. That means you have to climb down, go back up. But now if you were just focused on going peak to peak, then that would be a problem, because you're thinking, oh, how do I get there? But if you realize that, oh, you know what, it's going to be fun going back down the mountain. I wonder what I'm going to see on the other side. Oh, and what am I going to experience in the valley? And what am I going to experience as I start this other climb? How am I going to test myself? What am I going to learn in the process? It's a journey throughout the entire process. And I think where we lose or we fail is when we don't take notice. You know, that it's akin to that saying, you know, stop and smell the roses. Take time to enjoy the process by which you're doing whatever. And it's not just limited to your marriage. It could be your career or whatever. Enjoy the process, because the process is where all the gold is found.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly, especially when it just kind of came to mind. So our girls used to play volleyball, and every year we'd have to drive up to Reno. And when we would go up there, you know, of course, Lovey's driving and stuff. And I'm looking around and I'm like, when I'm not being sick, but the snow, you know, the scenery, it's so beautiful. And I'm in awe about like some of the things that I see. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. Or, you know, I want to share with him my excitement. I want to share with him and be like, ooh, did you see that too? So that when we talk about it later, he's just not, oh, no, I didn't see it. And I'm trying to explain it to him. You know how when there's that, oh, you had to be there to see it or to understand, or you had to be there to laugh or to get it or whatever it is. I want him to participate with me because we are in this journey together. So if I'm the only one seeing the scenery, it's not going to be fun, you know, and he's going to miss everything. And then I got to keep telling him about it. And he just feels like, well, all I do is drive and I don't, you know, that could cause some riff or whatever. And then I could be like, well, pay attention or whatever it is, you know. But I feel like we need to focus more on just the going throughs. Just, hey, we're here, we're going through, like you said, is a journey, it's not a destination. Because if you've arrived, then what are we gonna do now? I mean, we're still journeying, you know.
Right.
So, and we're still doing it together. I don't ever want to feel like I've arrived and that's just it. I always want to feel like I'm on a journey.
Good answer.
I know. I am so deep right now. I don't know what.
Y'all are deep. Look, this is stuff that we need to hear. And I am determined to continuously bring on couples like you that really tell it how it is. Because there's so much, like you said, all of this, just all this stuff, all of these couples that are, well, too good to be true because they only show the highlights. We don't talk about those valleys. We don't talk about how to communicate, how to go through that journey together, even on the parts where, you know, it could be boring. There's another windmill. It's like, I saw the last 132 windmills, but that doesn't take away from the joy of like, you know what? And now we're going to count windmill 133. And I'm enjoying the way that I'm just existing and holding your hand while we're doing this mundane thing together. And I really thank you guys for coming on and sharing your story, imparting your wisdom on me as you have been for years, and for pouring into my audience as well. It's very encouraging for me simply because even now I have made my best attempt at cleaning up my algorithm, unfollowing people, unfollowing pages, literally trying to rid myself of all of the negative things that can pierce my subconscious. I've even found myself, if we have an argument or have some type of disagreement, and here's my conspiracy theory part, y'all, you know, these phones listen to us. And we'll get upset with each other. And as soon as I open my phone, it's like, oh, well, if he doesn't care about you, and it's like everything, negative thing after negative thing. And even when I'm in a positive mood, I see things that can be very discouraging to people in my generation, younger, older. Like, it really doesn't matter. Just the state of relationships and how they're portrayed in a lot of the media that we consume, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. All of the things that are just being poured into us from every direction. And a lot of it, I believe, doesn't reflect real life in a sense of every relationship isn't terrible. Every relationship doesn't go into the valley and never emerge, never come out. And it's not, the men versus the women versus the men. It's really, there is a large population and a nice chunk of people who encourage one another to, like, hey man, I let you vent on my couch, but you're not spending the night here. You got to go home to your wife.
Right.
Having girlfriends that,
Right.
won't be complicit, that A in there, and that crazy, that accountability, that it's like, okay, girl,
Mhm.
you finished venting. Now let's talk about the solutions. Yeah, we're going to drink this wine, but when he calls to check and make sure that you're here, I'm going to answer the phone because I'm also accountable for you, your behavior, and your marriage. And
That's right.
I'm just really determined to make myself not look crazy when I say all of these things, that there are other voices and there are other people, other couples. It's not just me and my homegirls. It's not just a group of guys, that there really are couples here who genuinely and truly care and love one another. And even in the midst of whatever storms may come about, that they're still supporting one another. That's all right. We ain't got to talk to each other, but help me up this hill. Oh, I see you're about to lose your footing there. I'm still going to help you up the hill, but don't talk to me until we both feel better. So I really thank you guys for coming on, and thank you for all of your wise words. And you guys, make sure you check those show notes if you would like to hear more. I'll also leave the link for you guys if you'd like to check out the Married into Crazy podcast with Snooks and Lovey. You can go all the way back to the beginning